Good morning, everybody. I am Lavallo, and I have been to every single country in the world. I finished when I was 27, and in a week I'm going to turn 30, and so I am reliving all of the years in my 20s, remembering all of the travel that I did. And today I'm going to talk about when I was 26, which was one of the biggest travel years of my life. So it'll be pretty exciting to go through and remember it. I turned 26 in Singapore with a few of my friends from boarding school, which was really exciting. And then I went with a friend on this trip through the rest of Southeast Asia. So we started in Malaysia, we went up and we did my advanced scuba diving training, which was awesome. And then we went into Laos, and then we drove into Cambodia. And in Cambodia, I actually stayed there for like 3 weeks. I stayed in Phnom Penh for a few days, and then we went to Siem Reap. And I had been like go traveling like non-stop for such a long time, like months and months. And so I decided to take like 3 weeks and just stay at a resort and relax and figure out what I wanted to do next. And what's funny about that is still at the time, I didn't think that I was going to visit every country in the world, and I had just hit 150. Malaysia was my 150th country. And because I had just hit 150, I started getting more media and travel community attention because I was so young and I was like at so many countries. So I did a podcast at the time, and in it they say, you know, that you can be like the youngest or one of the youngest people to visit every country if you keep going. And at the time I said, you know what, I'm not going to do it. You know, I'm going to go back to work and, you know, I'll finish later on in life. And what's funny is that at the time I really believed that. I really didn't think that I was going to be finishing. And yet within a year I was done. And so what happened is while I was in Cambodia, I was also like looking at new jobs to take. And I was thinking about like going back to like investing and going into like different forms of that. So I was thinking about all these different things that I could do. But after Cambodia, I went back to the UAE. I was like waiting around here, and a couple of my friends were going to Kurdistan in Iraq, and they asked if I would come with them. I was really excited, so I said, absolutely. I was supposed to only go for, I think like 4 or 5 days. I loved it so much that we ended up staying there for like over a week, I think 10 days in total with this awesome guide, Karwan. We like loved our time there. And then I decided that I want to go back to my farm in Tanzania, and but I would add on a couple like countries on the way. So what I really wanted to do was to land in Zimbabwe and then go up all by land, but I couldn't figure out the right way to get from Zimbabwe into Malawi. So instead, like I spent a few days in Zimbabwe, then I flew to Malawi, and I did the entire, it's a very like long and narrow country, and I did the entire thing by road, literally up to the Tanzanian border, and then from the Tanzanian border into the center where my village is. And I stayed there for a while, also like thinking about like what would I do, like what would I get up to. I stayed in Tanzania for quite a while, and then I went back to Abu Dhabi, and I wanted to do a little bit more of like the Horn of Africa. And I was gonna do like Ethiopia and Sudan and Eritrea. And I really wanted to be able to go, you know, into Eritrea by land from Ethiopia. Now that's possible, before it wasn't. So what I did do though is I went all through Ethiopia and into Sudan over the land border, which is like a crazy part of both countries that like isn't often explored. And I just like love sitting on buses and like watching the land go by and like being in kind of like strange spots. That was actually a really hard trip though, because in Ethiopia, I was supposed to meet up with like all of my Ethiopian friends, and it was going to be great. But then the government shut down Facebook, and that was the only place we'd been communicating. I didn't have their phone numbers, so I was kind of like stranded in a way. It sucked so much to be in the city where I knew my friends were, but not being able to like get in contact with them. And then in Sudan, I had like all of this stuff planned with like an agent on the ground, and they ended up like not getting the permit. So I wanted to go see the pyramids, I wanted to go do a handful of things. I also couldn't book my flight back to Dubai because I was in Sudan and there's like sanctions. I couldn't like use my credit card even on the websites. It was such a mess. And finally like a friend helped me, or somehow I like got it arranged, we figured it out. And I flew back to Dubai, then I flew to Eritrea. I I've been back. It was the first country that I ever decided to go back to after I finished every country in the world. And that's because my first time in Eritrea, I like fell in love with the place. But just like in Ethiopia and Sudan, I got prevented because of like permits from being able to travel much. So the office was closed, the permit got denied, and then when I finally got the permit, there was like a national holiday, and all of the transportation was used for the army rather, and so couldn't go anywhere. So frustrating, but still fell in love with it, and that's the reason that I went back. Then I was about to go on a big Pacific trip because one of my friends was going to get married in Australia, and there's going to be this big reunion, and we were like, okay, then we will all get together, celebrate the wedding, and I thought after that I will do this big island hopping. So we went to the wedding, and then I went to Papua New Guinea, where I stayed with this amazing local host who like showed me all around. We like chewed betel nut. It was disgusting but amazing. Saw some super fascinating like wildlife. Then I went to Solomon Islands and Kiribati and Nauru, and then Micronesia, and then the Marshall Islands. And I spent Christmas that year alone on the Marshall Islands. But it was nice. I just like did like a long walk and like had a good meal. And then I flew to America, and I like met up with my family. I actually surprised them. They were all there for like New Year's Eve, and so I surprised them, and was like really excited to see them. I also went to New York, and while I was in New York, I met this woman who was starting a new venture capital fund, and I was like really excited by her. She like worked at the old firm I used to work at, and she was like looking for new people to help her out. So I, was really excited about that opportunity, and I said, you know what, like I want to go back to work, and so maybe this is something that I will do. I confirmed with her that I would start a few months later in April, and then I like planned the next few like countries of travel. I was going to do a little bit Caribbean, and then to finish off West Africa, and then go to Central and South America. So I flew to Haiti, where my best friend Shannon was staying and had been living there for like 7 years, working, speaks fluent Creole. It was awesome to go finally stay with her there. We hadn't seen each other in a while as well, so that was really, really fun. And we also went into the Dominican Republic to like a little kite surfing resort beach there, which was amazing. Then I went to the capital, she went back home. And then I flew to Central Africa. And honestly, this trip was amazing. I went to 9 different countries in Central Africa, but it was one of the only trips where I feel like I was kind of like country counting, in terms of I was like going just to go, and I don't really like that. Each of these countries either requires like many days or like a short amount of days, because the way the flights are set up, and because of like the access, and it's just a hard part of the world to travel in. But I ended up having a lot of fun. I started in Chad, and I stayed with this great host there. I went horseback riding. I saw this amazing like art. It was quite like a fun experience. A lot of people like complain about Chad being like aggressive, but I just like enjoyed my time. I like walked around the city. I like ate really good food. I thought that was fun. Then I went to Cameroon. I had a really bad experience with like a host from like one of these like booking websites. So I had to like switch into this awful hotel. It was like raining and bad. I couldn't get to travel the way that I wanted to. It was a few days. Like I need to absolutely go back. Then I went to Equatorial Guinea, and as you know, because I have a lot of other videos about Equatorial Guinea, I've been back because it's another country I'm fascinated by. They speak Spanish. It's one of the only countries like with an island and a mainland, where the capital is on the island. It has like a really interesting development story of resource wealth, but also like corruption, and it's just a intellectually fascinating place. So I loved my time there. One of the guys from the hotel, like the guy working at the hotel, like just took me around on like a trip to make sure that I could see everything. Then, because it was like a lot of like quick travel, I decided to spend a week in Sao Tome. Just went to like a resort and just relaxed for like 6 days, did nothing but like swim and enjoy. And then I flew to Gabon, and similarly to in Gabon, again, I've been back, so I've been able to see more, but there it was like either stay in the city for a few days or like spend weeks trying to explore more. And like I said, I was about to go to a new job and everything, so I only stayed a couple days. I had a great experience. I'm so happy that I've gone back and had like a better one. Then I went to the Republic of the Congo, to Brazzaville, and luckily I had a friend there, a friend of a friend. So she showed me around. We had like a great meal. We like looked at all this art. We like walked all over the city, which is something I wouldn't have been able to do on my own. So I'm so thankful to her. And then the Central African Republic at the time, and still, was like in the middle of like a really intense war. And so I was a little bit nervous to go, but I like booked a flight that would land at 8 a.m. and then I could like go return at like 8 p.m. And so I spent basically like only 12 hours there. I left the airport. I like went up to like a random taxi driver, asked if he would drive me around for the whole day. And I ended up being able to see a lot, like seeing the river and like into Republic of the Congo, and like some churches outside, and like we went to this amazing market, but it was only one day. After that, I flew to Luanda, Angola, and that was the first time that I met Alvaro Wandereds. He was working there, and so I stayed with him and a friend. I also had one of my friends from boarding school, Porfia, who is from Angola and was living there, and so I went and had a dinner with her, and randomly one of my friends from Brazil was actually also visiting. And that was crazy because when I got to the airport, I saw a sign with her name on it, and I was like, what flight is this person coming in on? There's like, oh, like in 2 minutes. So I waited and I saw her there, and I was like, what are the odds that you like run into a friend in Angola? And then I went to Cabo Verde, and I was supposed to then fly to Latin America through Portugal. But while I was in Cabo Verde, I found out that my grandmother had passed away after like a long and amazing life. So I had to switch all the trips around, shorten what I was going to do in Central America, shorten what I was going to do in Portugal. I decided to go home for the funeral, which I'm so happy that I did. And then, after spending that time with family, and knowing that I only had a few more, like maybe a month until I had to start working, I went to Belize. I like loved seeing the indigenous parts. I was also like met there with a journalist from there. I went to Guatemala, which is we had planned this 10-day trip there, and I ended up only being able to spend also one day, but because I entered like on the East Coast, like by boat, and like saw like part of the country that no one saw, I was really excited about it. I was also supposed to return there this April, but because of COVID, I couldn't. Then I went to Honduras, saw some of the most beautiful sunset that I've ever seen, like staying up in the north. Flew to Panama, and they call Panama like the Dubai of North America, which I like really believed when I was looking at it. And then I finally met up with the friends I was supposed to do all of that with. So we were supposed to do this whole thing together, but because of the funeral and everything, it got canceled. But I was in Peru, met up with my friends. We did Machu Picchu for the first time. We then flew to Paraguay. We went and saw the Iguazu Falls. We, in Argentina and Brazil. We went to Ecuador, where we met up with a buddy from there. Had a really nice time. Then we drove into Colombia. I got really sick in Colombia, but we still, enjoyed being in Bogota, and like just the Spanish culture was amazing. We actually stayed, even longer in like some other parts of the country because we had friends who were from there, like showed us around. We went to a Colombian football game. It's all amazing. So this was like April, so I had to go to New York to start this job. So I flew to New York, and I worked for 4 months for this like Indian venture capital fund focused on healthcare. It was an amazing experience, kind of like my first entry into investing. I learned so much from Alcra. I also just like loved being back in New York, like with some of my friends. At the time, I was also sponsored on Instagram by lots of different gyms, by like 5 gyms in New York, because I've been working with like a publicist who was a fitness person. So like she had gym access, and I got super, super fit. I like worked out at all these amazing gyms. I got like just like free training every single day. I went like 6 days a week. I've never been so fit in my life. I loved it. And then I had 17 countries left. And rather than continue working, I decided that I would finish. And, I was going to like focus on this like travel thing and like spend the rest of the year. It was like July. It was like, I have 17 countries, I have 7 months, like let's go do it. I went to Cuba with my friend Ginny. We stayed there for a week. I love Ginny. It was so much fun to go on a trip with her. I hope that we get to travel again. Then I flew to Ireland. When I was in Ireland, that's when I found out that Marriott was going to sponsor me for the rest of my trip, so I'd be able to stay in their places and they would do a lot of the publicity for me. So that was exciting. I went to Algeria, one of my favorite countries. I ended up staying there a whole month because I was trying to get into Libya and my Libyan visa wouldn't come through. I stayed a month in Algeria, mostly in the small city in the east called Annaba. I made amazing friends who I'm still friends with. I stayed at their house for weeks. We partied, we like went to the beach, we went in the mountains. We ate so much amazing Algerian food. I'm obsessed with Algeria. That summer is incredible memories. Went into Tunisia, for which I was revisiting, flew to Libya, spent 3 days in Libya. Also not a great time to visit the country, but I was really lucky. I was staying with the family of a friend of mine that I had known for years, so I felt very safe and was able to explore the country and the culture through my friends. After that, I flew to Kenya, and I had been living in Kenya the year before, so I was really excited to stay with my friends and enjoy time with my friends, but I was also trying to get a South Sudanese visa. I finally got it, went to South Sudan, stayed in Juba, another place that was really war-torn at the time, could only stay in this capital, but also met up with some friends that I randomly met on Instagram, had one of the best parties of my life, an amazing night in Juba. And then I flew back to Dubai, and it was Eid, and so I went to Syria. I had finally gotten like access into Syria. At the time, Americans were not allowed into Syria, but I got special permission because I was visiting a friend. And so flew to Lebanon, spent a couple days in Beirut, and then drove into Syria, spent Eid there. Another one of the best travel experiences in my life. The food, staying with one of my best friends' families, just like in their home with the family. Went to a Syrian wedding, explored the old town, loved it. And this was early September. I flew back to the UAE. I went to my favorite hotel in Fujairah, which was also a Marriott hotel, so I was being, sponsored, and they like made a cake with all my travel photos on it. They like gave me everything, like hang gliding. They wrote "Happy Birthday, Salvatore" like on the beach, and it was a great way to turn 27. And at the time, it was a great way to turn 27, and I had a lot of the hard countries out of the way, and I had a couple months left to finish them, and that's what the next video will be about. Sorry that this one was so long, but 26, I did so much. So yeah, every time that I'm telling these stories, it's just like a chronological thing. I can't like even believe how much I've done, but it's so fun to relive it with you guys. So I hope you watch the next videos and that you have enjoyed this.